All right. Welcome everybody to the November 4th community meeting. I actually, could someone else share um, the agenda? I don't have my normal machine that shares it is giving me some issues. Thank you, Sam. Would you mind just sharing the browser window and disabling the preview or the edit? It's getting there. Uh, Zoom in. I think that weird. There it goes. All right, that's better. Can you zoom in a little more? Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so this we're going to be talking about maybe cutting an 017 instead of a 16. We are going to do a little update on the user survey. Looks like we'll talk about some structured log stuff. Um, Sam has been exploring this GoLeak package that we want to talk about a bit. And then I'm going to talk about this access review screenshot that I put in there. Something I'm exploring with a change that I'm making. So with that, we'll start with the first item. So I believe Sam wrote this. Basically, should we cut an 017 instead of doing a 16 bug fix release or an bug enhancement release, and just say that Electron's going to be 0.18. I'm open to the idea. I don't think that yes, master has a lot of breaking changes in it. I agree with that. But I also, the 0.16.2 label that we created and gave to specific issues, all those issues are very easy to backport into our 016 branch. So there is the overhead of backporting, but there is um, like the problem is like 017 right now as is not ready, and it won't be for a while. We made some we introduced some known debt around the fact that we were going to assume that the next release would be an Electron, and so we would have to either revisit some of that work and make adjustments accordingly, or um, I don't think things would work very well right now off master. Um, I think that is my biggest concern with doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I kind of feel we should stick to the original plan, and the changes in master are probably a little unstable at this point, and also doing the release with the brand with the tag, just focused release only on a few things that we feel are like a point release, not a major release. I mean minor, sorry.
Yeah, what do you think, Sam? I mean, you put it down, so I'm curious for your.
Yes, so the biggest ones that's really concerning is being able to use forms meaningfully in a plugin. And so we can definitely cherry pick that as well. But I think I wrote an issue that technically is a breaking change, but we could just call it a patch release since it was never working in the first place anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that one, I think it's really just if there is anyone who is waiting for something that is currently in master and that we don't have it tagged on 16.2, I'd like to see that call it out sooner than later.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that. So we'll surface that in the Slack channel as well, and maybe I'll put a tweet out that says like, hey, here's a list of go through our unreleased change logs and or open issues and let us know if there's anything, because we're gonna cut they'll release soon. And I agree with you on the form thing. Like currently right now, that stepper form and the way you embed forms is just broken. So the fact that we're changing the API in a in a whatever you would call it uh, in that release is okay to me because it's not usable anyway. So
Yeah, makes sense.
um, okay. So we've got. So yeah, I guess for that, the item will just be to make sure we get some information out there about the upcoming bug fix release and uh, make sure we just solicit people to say, hey, we want this or whatever. User survey update. Is that something we can do now, Isha, or do you want to?
Yeah, so the responses have stopped trickling in. I think we have about 11 responses so far. And I think it's like a good point for us to like stop and consolidate and reflect on like what we've learned or any insights. And so hopefully by like next week, end of next week, we'll do a share out, whether it's through the community meeting or like a slide deck or something like that. But expect to see some results from the survey soon.
Awesome. Cool. Logs, structured or not, 1582. If you want to bring that one up.
Yes, I put that in. I ran into this yesterday based on the issue opened a couple of days ago, but Pop Fushi. And I mean, we know that logs are pretty complex, and he was having some of the XML tags removed inside the logs, which is different than some other software out there. Different how the other software out there displays them. So I kind of blindly went into it and investigated, can we show that stuff inside the log viewer? And the answer is yes, we can. It's a little convoluted. But then this morning, I kind of stepped back and realized, is that really what we want to do here? Especially considering, what we discussed on our meeting that we had a few months ago when we decided that structured logs are kind of something we should address in the future. And in essence, this is a structural log entry here. You can see there are some fields there that are specifically defined, like source system, message type. And that all metadata should be in ideal world parsed and assigned to fields, and we should display this as a single entry in probably grid or something like that, or table, whatever we decide that component is going to be. And I actually did a little bit of work on that previously. And on the UI side, so my question is, what do we think is the best way to approach
Hey,
this?
Sam.
Should we?
Are you pulling up the structured log? Cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Also, can you make that a little bigger too, Sam? Thanks.
So I kind of feel that we should not address this right now. Probably do a little more comprehensive approach. The downside will probably have to do parser for JSON and HTML. Sorry, XML.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you. I think that having like first class support for structured logs does make sense. There's a lot of tools that use structured log formats, but I also think that the error in our general logging is still an error. Like we should not be like, even though, yes, that's a structured log format that we're getting, we should still be able to render it without uh, sanitizing it and making it, so that it's not the actual log file coming out of there. So, in a case where
Right.
something has HTML tags in the log or XML tags in the log, those should still be rendering, even if it's not a structured log format we can parse.
So basically, what you're saying, we should do a temporary fix to make sure the metadata shows up for now, and then do structural logs later.
Not a temporary fix. I think it just we're over sanitizing the log output in a way that
Right.
is not rendering correctly. So I think that it's not so much a temporary fix; it'd be a permanent fix, so that, because right now any tag artifact in there would get sanitized out, and you wouldn't be looking at your actual log representation,
Right.
whether it was a structured log or not. So I think we just need to fix that and not do that anymore, with our log viewer, and then still add support for structured logging at some point.
Cool. Yeah. We can do that. Yeah, it would be good to address this at some point, although I'm not worried, how many different formats are and how well we can process them. And especially, I think the hardest thing with structural logs is going to be just collecting the log samples and make sure we support all of them. Because there's obviously huge variety. This looks like some probably Java generated, maybe JMS or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, depending on,
actually,
I think it does deserve some research into, like, I don't know a lot about structured logs personally, so I think it does deserve some research into, like, what are well-known formats that are being used. If it's just XML and JSON, then we implement the ability to handle those two types of formats for structured logging and go along our day. And if somebody comes along with some very specific, structured log format they want to support, then we can consider it at that time. But, like, if everything we find is either using JSON or XML, then I'm pretty happy to just say let's only support those, and deal with any edge cases as they come up.
Sounds good.
Cool. Any questions or more thoughts there before we move on? All right. Moving on to the detecting leaking Go routines. So this is, Sam brought this up, and it's a pretty neat package from the folks over at Uber. There's this Go leak package, which you can use on your tests, and it will detect Go leaks, Go routine leaks specifically. It's pretty neat. Sam was showing it to me yesterday or the day before, and we walked through one of our existing kind of testy flakes, flaky tests that this was able to drop in place and be like, yep, you have a Go routine leak. And I believe we fixed it in the little pairing session we did. I don't remember. We almost did. We got there. We fixed one half of it, right? There's like multi-part. Yeah. So this is pretty neat. Sam, you're the one who came up with it. You want to talk about it some more? Or?
Yes. So the package is kind of neat in the sense that you can add a little defer Go leak, and it'll catch leaks that are running in a particular unit test after you're done running it. So that's useful for us. But the other piece of it is that you can also just throw it on main and just kind of see everything. And I think, like, that's probably something we want to think about long term. And even there are other tools, like, I've never tried pronouncing this out loud, pprof. Maybe someone knows how to pronounce this, but there are ways we can, like, measure and start benchmarking Octant, which is something that we haven't really done, right? And we've had issues in the past of people saying, like, I leave Octant open and it crashes, and sometimes it's a front end issue. But I think something like this would help us just make sure that we're not leaking things in the back end, and also help kind of make some of the other issues like I leave a terminal instance running and now my CPU usage is 100%. And hopefully this would start mitigating some of those issues and give us a more like a measurable way to do it. And even just for this example, the flaking test, it gives us a very reproducible way to catch them as well.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I think this is great. I think yeah, expect to see us slowly adding this throughout our current test suite and within Octant. I think we'll really benefit from taking advantage of this package.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks for doing that, Sam. That's really huge. Especially, I mean, those nasty flakes are so annoying. If you can iron them out, that would be awesome.
So this is I put this here. This is from me in the works. So I've been reworking our existing access control. Specifically, we have this has access check that exists in the code. I would share it, but my sharing is not working. Anyway, there's a has access check that exists in the code, and what it does is every time we go into object storage, before we make an API call, we attempt to see if you have permissions to make that call. And if you do, then we allow it to go through. And if you don't, we disallow it. The main thing that has access does is it has a cache where it will cache the result of that check. So it'll say like, oh, did you have access to list deployments? Yes, you did. Okay. We're in the same context, same namespace. All right. We're just going to go ahead and make the API request and assume that your permissions haven't changed. And generally speaking, this works. The problem that we run into, though, is that when access does change, or when you start to deal with CRDs, you may be making a request that you do have permission for, but maybe that CRD isn't installed yet. And what you don't want to happen there is for the system to think you don't have permission to something because the resource you're trying to query is not installed in the cluster yet. That's a different type of error. It's not an access denied error. It's a this thing doesn't exist in the cluster yet error. And currently, we masquerade those as a very similar thing. And the result is that if you, for example, make a list call using our object storage through a plugin to say list all the custom resources of a certain custom resource, you will first you will get a failed error, like an access denied error, telling you that that thing's not installed. But then on your subsequent query, you would get an empty list back. And so what happens is that the way the behavior changes from call to call. It's not predictable. And we want to avoid that. We do want it to be predictable. And so I'm currently refactoring our existing has access code by deleting it all. So it's one way to refactor something, is just to delete all of it. And what I'm replacing it with is a library that is just called subject access. But what that library does is it goes out and it attempts to get all of the subject access that you have for a cluster and finds the list, create, update, delete verbs that you have for each resource. And it does this when you're initially loading the namespace. I've managed to get this down to taking just about 400 milliseconds. And in the scheme of like startup times, it's actually, with the has access checks removed from the API calls, Octant becomes more responsive. So the net benefit is that overall the system is more responsive. There is a little bit more startup time, initial startup time, but really it's not something I'm noticing, and it's not something my tests are capturing either, because the actual time to like get the browser open, or in this case Electron open, and start to like get the initial screen rendered, the subject access call has already happened. So it's actually working out pretty well. But so with that said, the benefit here is that there's been a long-standing issue opened to get an access review page into Octant, similar to what you're seeing on the screen now, which is this just list. This is not completed. I just took a screenshot of what I had working right now. So this is cluster scoped specifically right here. But yeah, so this will present you a full list of what you have access to and the expectations based on your current context and the namespace, as well as your cluster level access. And so that feature will just kind of get for free because we're building up this subject access cache at the start. And then anytime you switch a namespace, that cache is refreshed because obviously we want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date information, and we're not trying to look at old information based on, like, if you install a new context or a new kube config and the context switches or refreshes, the cache, the access cache will refresh. When you switch a namespace, the access cache will refresh. So, but unless you're doing those two operations, the cache stays as is, and we'll just assume that you will maintain your current set of working permissions. So the only thing we'll have to do is provide a way to allow you to just explicitly refresh if you need to. I haven't figured out exactly what that'll look like yet. Right now, you could just switch contexts or namespaces to trigger the refresh, but we'll probably put some type of, circular arrow button somewhere that you can click.
Refresh button on top right of the screen.
Yeah, exactly. So
something like that. That's awesome. So is there a delay when you switch namespaces because of this? Do we do it at that point? Or?
Yeah, so there is not a delay that I'm noticing. Obviously, other people will be able to test it here soon. I'll be putting up a branch. The whole process of, like, what we do in Octant when we switch namespaces now is as expensive as going and fetching the list of all of the resources. So I'm not noticing any significant delay between namespace switching or context switching. And in fact, overall, in actual benchmarking of using the browser networking tab and like Go timing tools, Octant's responding faster because it's no longer doing hundreds of has access checks potentially. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
So that's all I have for that. Any other questions there? All right. Open Q&A. Should there be naming conventions? This is from Sam.
Yeah. So I talked about a kind plugin a while ago, and I'm like, I want to name it, call it something, because I got tired of saying Octant plugin for blank or trying to do better. So I thought, like, so I took the VS Code model, right? Like, there are some VS Code plugins that have I guess, like, non-descriptive names, like, for example, Git Lens, right? Like the little plugin that basically gives you a little, like, helper text with Git to see who last committed what, and it's got a name for it. So I thought, okay, maybe there is something here to either, well, I don't want to, like, come up with something that's clever for the sake of just being clever and be like, that's punny. But at the same time, like, I want to see if, like, we want to start thinking about these conventions so that, like, plugin names are somewhat, plugins are somewhat discoverable, right? So it'd be like, there's this Octant plugin that does things with Knative, or Octant plugin that does things with Helm, right? We don't want to start creating a scenario where future plugins all have funky names, and now we're like, I know there's a plugin for it, but I don't know how to search for it because it's called something else. So I think maybe the core of this question is here. Like, for example, I'm right now, at least, like, through the internals of VMware, I'm proposing to call it Kino, like, because kind is Kubernetes and Docker. So I thought, like, oh, maybe it's like kind and Octant. Anyway. But maybe there's a case that shouldn't be done.
I think you should call it kinder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind is just bad. Like if you're looking for kind, like you have to like type Kubernetes or GitHub
Yeah.
every time.
That's what I'm thinking, that we want to
So from like a there's two parts to this. There's like the VMware part, like VMware open source, and I'm pretty sure that anything that's generated out of our group that's going to be open sourced and you know under a VMware repo will be Octant plugin 4 and follow that naming convention. This is the convention that was used for the Octant plugin for Knative, and I believe it is the convention that VMware desires to use for plugins that we create, just from a legal perspective. So as you go through the open sourcing process within VMware, if you can get them to use some other name, awesome. if not, then I think most of our stuff will end up as Octant plugin 4. And generally, I don't think that's a bad convention, right? Like if every plugin out there used that, it becomes very searchable, and it also yes, it's a little verbose, but you know exactly, like Octant plugin 4 kind, Octant plugin 4 Helm, Octant plugin 4 Knative, Octant, like it creates this very like easy sense of like, oh, this is an Octant plugin for that thing. So yeah, I don't think it's a great name, but I don't think it's the worst name. I think clever names generally are worse.
Like kinder. Thank you. That was a joke.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. That's my opinion. I basically, my opinion is we'll do what we have to do, and then we'll. But it might be good to encourage a convention in our documentation, right? And say like, and we can think about that and look at what other plugins are currently doing, and just say like here's names of other plugins that we are like as the team, we're like, yeah, we encourage plugin authors to name their plugins this way.
Yeah, and I also think anything that helps helps discovering plugins easier. I'm having a hard time for some reason pronouncing that word today. Is a good thing. So either adding a tag, or especially now at some point when we have like that inside the UI, that will not be so important. But right now, any naming convention that helps user discover Octant is a good thing, I believe.
Okay, cool. So I think the takeaway that I'm getting from this is it's probably a good idea to just stick with the Octant plugin for blank model, just so VMware will not push back on the ticket. But also just, I think being clever here doesn't really win us anything. So let's just not do it.
Yep. I think yeah. I think I agree. I do agree. I don't think I agree. I do agree. All right. I think that's all we have. I just want to say thank you to everyone who filled out the survey and contributed to it and did interviews. It's really appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you, Isha, for pulling all that together and getting it out there and collecting all this information. Yeah, I think next week we'll be able we'll be done going through it all, and we'll be able to just share what we captured. I think it's really great. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who got involved.
And it's not late to submit feedback at any point.
No, yeah, of course.
Survey is kind of closed at this point, I assume, but please, if you have any feedback, hit us at any time. Slack, here, GitHub.
It's actually still
Love to hear
open.
it. All
It's
right.
actually still open, and you can find the link on the website or in the Hack MD notes from our previous community meeting.
Oh, all right.
They'll want to
still open.
contribute. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Get a link in there real quick. I'm gonna do it while we're still live. I'm gonna go grab the link. Survey. There it is. Here. Here we go. Survey's still open.
It's pretty short, and you don't have to answer every question. So please go and do it.
All right, and that's. I put it in there too. Okay, I put it everywhere. Yeah, I think that's all we have for this week. We'll get some stuff together around solidifying what 016.2 is going to look like, and try to really put our focus and attention on getting this Electron stuff ready for 0.17. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks, everyone.
See you all. Thank you. Bye.